You're listening to the LJS podcast brought to you by LearnJazzStandards.com. If you get value out of today's episode, consider adding value back by leaving us a one-time, monthly, or annual donation at LearnJazzStandards.com/support. We appreciate your help. Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Brent. Welcome to the LJS podcast. This is episode 35, where today we're going to be talking about how mastering tempo and rhythms can transform your jazz playing. This is a topic that a lot of us don't always focus on: rhythm, tempo, and time feel. But it's incredibly important for our jazz improvement and for our musical improvement in general. We have to have a handle on this, not just harmony, not just soloing, and not just melody. We have to understand rhythm, time, and tempo. So excited to talk about that today. And on today's show, I have a very special guest coming on and joining me, my good friend and professional drummer, Diego Maldonado, from here in New York City. So excited to have him on. But before we jump into the show today, I just want to invite you, if you haven't become part of the Learn Jazz Standards community, now is the time to do it. And the best way to do that is to sign up for our newsletter. You can do that by going to learnjazzstandards.com/newsletter. And when you sign up for our newsletter, you're getting exclusive updates every single week. You're getting on the inside of things that others do not know about. It's very important to do this and become part of this community. And also, for doing this, you get a free ebook, our free jazz guide to practicing ebook for signing up. So a little extra perk there. So join the LJS community. Go to learnjazzstandards.com/newsletter. Okay, now let's jump in to our conversation today with Diego Maldonado. Okay, so I'm welcoming back on the show Diego Maldonado, professional drummer, good friend of mine here in New York. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Brent, for having me, and it's a pleasure always to come down here and talk about music.
So, I wanted to have you in to talk about this because a lot of times I feel like we ignore two incredibly important things about playing any style of music, not just jazz, not just two, there's more to it than that, but rhythm and time and that whole element of things that really I think drummers think about a lot in comparison sometimes to other instrumentalists. So I wanted to talk to you about that today, try to pick your brain about some of this stuff that maybe some other instrumentalists don't think about. And maybe at the end, we'll talk a little bit about some things that you would suggest for drummers to do. So my first question for you is as a drummer, when you're playing in a jazz setting, are there certain things that you particularly notice from instrumentalists that you're playing with from those standpoints that you maybe could see some improvement happening, or you find maybe a pet peeve in any of that?
Yeah, of course. Every time, even more when I'm playing with younger musicians than me, I sometimes I feel that maybe we're not locking up with the feel or with the tempo, and sometimes you see a lot of guys who, when they're soloing, they start rushing a lot or dragging a lot. So.
Well, why do you think that? When you see people like rushing or dragging, what do you think the reason for that is?
It could be several reasons. One thing is like the technical abilities of that player are not at the point that they're comfortable improvising.
Yeah.
So that takes a toll when you're like, and even more when you're performing, because you get nervous and so everything that is not ready, it gets worse when you're performing because of a lot of factors. But I think that's one important part, and the other one is that sometimes people don't take the time to practice rhythm, because there's a lot of information about harmony and all the scales that you can use and all the things that you can melodically do when you're improvising that some people take for granted, the rhythm, and that's half of being able to improvise.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm getting at, because we do focus so much, especially with jazz, because there's so much harmonic movement going on, and there's such an emphasis on melody and improvising that we forget about rhythm in our sense of time. And I remember having just actually a beginner guitar student a while ago who I really noticed this in, that they were playing all the right notes, they were playing the right chords, they clearly understood music, but there was something,
Missing.
desperately missing from what they were doing. And I identified it as such, that, well, they just really didn't have a good sense of time, didn't have a really good sense of rhythm. And I said that, honestly, if you can play all the notes right, if you can play all the chords right, but you don't have that rhythm, that sense of time, nothing's going to sound good.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I have an anecdote. A long time ago, I went to see. I used to go to the Collective School of Music here in New York City back in the early 2000s, and I saw a clinic by this bass player, and he brought people to play with him, and he basically asked people to play a solo with just one note. So
That sounds kind of hard.
it's hard, and people was like, how can I play a solo with one note? It's the same, like sometimes we drummers are used to it, because sometimes we play a solo on one drum, and we have to develop that rhythmic ability and variety in order to play something nice on one drum. So people was like struggling super hard to make something with just one note, and then he brought that point out, that's what you're struggling, because you don't have anything rhythmic to say. It's because you're only focusing on scales and notes, and not on the rhythm. So
guilty as charged.
Exactly. So I mean everybody is guilty, because there's so much information about harmonic content for a solo, and very little information about rhythm.
Right. So what are some things that you would suggest to start focusing in on, if that's something that and this is for drummers too, it's not just other instrumentalists obviously, but to start really focusing on that side of playing jazz, improvising, any style of music?
I think there are three main things that I consider are basic, and they're like the foundation for any musician to develop a better sense of time or tempo, and also to master rhythm, or help to internalize rhythmic rhythms and subdivisions better. The first thing I think is very important for like everybody is to start using a metronome right away for everything. Whatever you're gonna practice, use a metronome, and first you have to learn how to follow that metronome. You wanna be able to, and even more nowadays, this ability or this skill is important, because we are using more and more technology on the bandstand. If you're maybe not in jazz, but if you're playing pop music, rock, or electronic music, you're gonna be surrounded by machines, by loops, drum machines, backing tracks, and you need to be able to play with that precision, with that metronomical precision, and in those cases you're gonna have to follow something that has perfect time. So you need to develop that. But that's a different skills than creating your own time. When you're playing in a more acoustic setting, you have to create time. So that's the other thing that I believe is really important for every musician, is to start practicing in a way that you are not following something, but you are creating your own time, and a time that is good and precise. You
Yeah.
know.
I find it interesting that you distinguish the two of those as almost like two separate different challenges, because I remember like when I was a long time ago, I was in high school, and I was playing in a prog rock band, and we went into the recording studio, and it was my first time in the recording studio, and we were tracking everything separately, as is fairly tradition there, and I was playing, with a click track, and I didn't practice for that. and I wasn't experienced. And that is certainly a challenge, is to be able to play with that track. And I almost feel like, as far as, and tell me if you agree with me or not, that's almost like a starting point for the other thing you were talking about, which is creating your internal clock, your internal time, where you can create your own tempo, your own time on your own, is you kind of first need to go, okay, can I play with the machine? Can I play with the metronome? Can I lock in with that? And then what happens when I take it away?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there are two different skills, I would say. And yeah, you're right. I think the first one is learn how to play with the metronome, be able to follow it and make it feel good, make it feel like he's somebody else that is playing with you. You have to make the metronome feel like it's part of the band, and that's very, very important nowadays, because as you're saying, every time you go to a studio to do a record or even to play live, I mean, we are using metronomes and drum machines and loops more and more and more. So that's something that every musician that is aspiring to be a professional musician, that is a skill that it needs to be developed. Now, talking about my second point about creating, number two, creating your own time, your inner clock. It's something that I see, and it happened to me. I started playing with the metronome all the time, but then when I take the metronome off, I realized I was sometimes rushing, sometimes dragging, and so I thought, like, what can I do to actually make sure that every time I play by myself or I play with other musicians without a click, I can hold my tempo, I can keep my tempo steady.
Hey everybody, just taking a quick break from today's show to talk to you about our e-course, 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing. I get emails almost every day from jazz musicians asking the questions, what do I practice and how do I practice? They know where they want to be in their jazz playing, they know how they want to sound, they're just not exactly sure how to get there. And that's why me and the LJS team have created our new e-course, 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing. 30 Days to Better Jazz Playing is an audio e-course that brings you through 30 days of focused, goal-oriented practicing, where you're going to be working on things that will actually improve your jazz playing. This course is designed for all instruments and for all skill levels, and is really great for anybody looking to practice with purpose and to make real improvement in their jazz playing. If you want to learn more about this e-course, go to learnjazzstandards.com/30days. That's learnjazzstandards.com/30days. I hope to see you in the course.
By thinking about it and obviously asking some of my teachers at the time, they recommend me to start using the metronome in a more creative way. And and now it's even easier because there's so many apps and stuff that you can program. And for me, it was like I start to taking off beats of the metronome. First I started with just putting 2 and 4, and then was just 2, and then was just 4, and then was just putting a click every other bar. And nowadays I have some exercises where sometimes when I do up tempos, I put just one click every 4 or every 8 bars, and I have the metronome there to check that I'm holding on a steady tempo. But the space is so wide that I'm actually have to create the tempo. I
Right.
need to have the subdivisions and everything inside of me in order to every 4 bars or every 8 bars to lock in with that click. So that type of exercises are great for every musician.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can even go more challenging with putting the metronome on the upbeats.
Oh, the offbeats.
Or yeah, or yeah, like in the
Yeah.
Ano 4 or the Ano 3 or something like that. And when you get to that point, it becomes really interesting, and then you realize like, oh, my tempo is really messed up, because you're gonna see how hard it is to hold a tempo,
Yeah.
having those clicks so far away from each other, you know.
So for someone who's like is really struggling with this right now, really struggling with keeping time and not rushing, not dragging. They don't have an inner clock at all. Where do they start? Like, what's the with all that you just described? What's the starting point?
Okay, well, it depends on the style of music you're like trying to learn. But now I will say this for mostly jazz. The first thing that you have to do is to start with a click on 2 and 4.
Okay.
That's the most basic thing.
Okay.
And
Now, why 2 and 4?
well, because those are the most important accents on the jazz music, and even if you're practicing to play rock or pop, also that's the backbeat. So it's important to have that, to be used to listen to that, and those are, as I said before, very important accents on this music. And so you have some. You're not gonna have the one. Everybody's like used to hear the one. In this case, you're not gonna have the one. And that's gonna throw you off a little bit at the beginning, but then you get used to it. And after that, you can go. I would say the second step will take another beat of the metronome and just use it on the 4 or on the 2. And if you're going to if you're practicing like up tempos, maybe you can put a one click on just the 1, and play with that for a long time. After that, you can start doing a click every other bar, and stuff like that, until try to make the space longer and longer between beats, so, and then you start realizing, and you're gonna realize what is your tendency, and you can address that, like, oh, I tend to drag or I tend to rush, and then you get more conscious about what you need to do in order to improve that.
I think another thing that's something to at least just point out to everybody is that playing at different tempos also has their different challenges. A lot of times people say, and I know we've covered this on our podcast before, is that playing at fast tempos is difficult, but it's not just difficult because it's technically difficult. It's also feeling the time at that speed. But in the same way, playing at a really slow tempo is also equally as hard, if not harder, because it's a struggle to feel the time or subdivide over that slow tempo.
Exactly.
And so when you're doing these exercises that Diego's describing, is to also consider trying them at different tempos, because you can get used to it just playing at a comfortable medium tempo, but then everything kind of changes a little bit if you speed it up or you slow it down.
And I would say your mindset also changes when you're playing. I mean, it should change when you're playing on fast tempos or slow tempos. I tend to think slower when I'm playing fast, and think faster when I'm playing slow. So I try to think on a smaller subdivision when I'm playing slower tempos, and I try to think on a more wide subdivision when I'm playing fast tempos, and that makes me feel more relaxed.
Half notes and whole notes and things like that.
And that way I feel more relaxed than just feeling 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. I just rather to feel 1 done. And that's I mean, you're gonna feel it in your body. It's gonna be more relaxed, and your playing is gonna feel more relaxed though.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have another thing that I believe is very important for every musician, and it is to to master the subdivisions. And there's like, for me, 3 subdivisions that are very, very important. And they are like 8 notes, the 8-note triplets, and the 16 notes. I believe those, like 95% of the music that we hear in this part of the world is built on those subdivisions. So I think it's very important for every musician to master those. And I would recommend musicians to practice shifting between them in different kind of exercises. I can talk a little bit of different exercises that we can do.
Yeah.
Going back and forth between 8 notes, quarter notes, triplets, and 16 notes. This is something that is happening a lot in modern music and in jazz as well. After 40s, 50s, when jazz start to get a fusion with Latin rhythms, African rhythms, and Brazilian rhythms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The rhythmic palette of jazz, expanded, and it's not only the swing notes anymore. So we started using another kind of rhythmic devices in order to play jazz, and I think it's very important that we are comfortable shifting between those, because everybody can play, and it happens a lot. And you see when you go and play and somebody say, oh, let's play this like a straight 8 kind of feel or bossa nova kind of thing. Everybody's gonna improvise and play on 8 notes and 16 notes,
right? Yeah.
And very few musicians are gonna start playing triplets or imposing like a 6/8 kind of feel on top of that, because it's sometimes it could be hard. And usually when you're not experienced doing that, the tempo and the groove suffers a lot. And that's why, but it sounds really good when you do it, and when you do it right. And that's something that gives variety to your improvisation. So I really encourage people to spend time, because we take that for granted. But I really encourage people to spend time practicing going from quarter note to 8 notes to triplet to 16 notes, and at least work with those 4 rates for a while. And you're gonna see how, like, if you put a metronome and start going back and forth between those, you're gonna see how that you're gonna start like rushing every time you go to a 16 notes, dragging when you go to the triplets, and sometimes rushing when you go back to the 8 notes.
Oh yeah,
and
hard.
Stuff like that. And
it's really hard.
And for me, it's been a really helpful exercise in order to make my groove deeper and my playing in general more precise.
So if I might share a little bit, so the way I actually practice this, exactly what you're describing, is as a guitarist, you could be a horn player, is what I like to do is I either like to play free, or I'll pick a song, a jazz standard or whatever, a song that I know, and I'll start pretty focusing on one rhythm for a longer period of time. So if I pick a song, I'll play the first chorus quarter notes, and then the second chorus I'll do 8th notes. The third chorus I'll do 8th note triplets, and the fourth chorus 16th notes. And I'll have the tempo at a slow enough tempo that by the time I get to the 16th notes, I'm able to actually technically execute them. And then, so practicing that is on its own can have its challenges, because like Diego said, you will experience like, oh wow, like I'm dragging, I'm rushing these notes, and then you can, up the ante a little bit and start going every 4 bars you switch. And that's where sometimes, if maybe you have a hard time conceptualizing this while you're going over the form of a song, it could be helpful just to play free. When I say playing free, I mean simply just improvise wherever you want, playing notes and creating melodies without the stipulation of a form of song form.
That's a perfect way of practicing this. I mean, and you can apply these to like pretty much everything that you do. If you're practicing arpeggios or scales or I mean, everybody tends to practice in scales and arpeggios only in 8 notes, but you can actually practice those on triplets and 16 and like, I don't know, going up on 8 notes, going down on triplets and stuff like that, You can be very creative with this thing. I mean, the only thing that is here is like try to mix the different subdivisions, and there you can go on a step further, because you can mix that or for instance, if we're talking about 16 notes, you can put 4 16 notes on one beat, but you can use also silence, space between those notes, and then you create a bunch of other figures or rhythmic cells that can also be mixed and thrown in the mix. The same. You can do the same with triplets, and you can do the same with 8 notes. So play with those new figures that you're gonna find by adding space and adding silence, and that's gonna take the exercise more difficult, and
step up.
Step up, and you're gonna, after a while, it takes time, but after a while you're gonna see how your inner clock and and how going back and forth between these rhythms are going to make you a better improviser and musician at the end, because your solos are gonna sound more interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so one last question for you. This is like specifically for drummers, and let's make it even more specific. This is a question for maybe drummers that are looking to play jazz, or even just jazz drummers now that are just trying to get better. What's like your top tip that you can give to those drummers?
For jazz drummers, I would say listen a lot to the music that you want to learn. Because music is like a language, and if you want to learn a language, you have to listen to that a lot in order to get all the nuances, all the the how it sounds, and pick a musician or a drummer that you really like, and start analyzing that guy and transcribing and learning stuff from him, and just try to play as much as you can, though, and practice, and spend some time on the practice room, and getting your technical skills up to the level,
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, Diego, thanks for joining on the show again. Really appreciate it, having you out, and we'll look forward to having you again.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to come down here and talk to you.
All right, that's all for today's show. I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks for tuning in, and we want to hear from you. Do you have any tips for improving your tempo, your time, or your rhythm? You can leave us a comment in the comment section below if you're on the website. We'd love to hear from you. This is a jazz community. And remember, if you got any value out of today's podcast episode, consider adding value back by leaving us a one-time, monthly, or annual donation at learnjazzstandards.com/support. Or if you're on the website, feel free to click the support button below. All right, next week we're going to be coming out with episode 36 of the LJS podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you then.